Hello, this is the Reluctant Marketer podcast. We explore marketing for people who don't want to do it, but feel they must. I'm Matthias Bohlen. Hello, dear listeners. This is another episode of the Reluctant Marketer podcast. And today I'm so happy to have Noah Bragg here. He's the founder and maker of Potion SO, a website builder based on Notion documents. I think we'll have to talk about this later in great detail. And first of all, I'm so happy to have you here. Good afternoon.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matthias. I'm glad to be here.
Great. So let's have a little bit of background from your side. What is Potion and how did you come to the idea to make it?
Yeah, so Potion is a website builder that's built on top of Notion. So it's kind of like you write all your content and everything in Notion. That's where all that lives. And then Potion turns that content into a website that you can have your own custom domain. It hosts it for you and then allows you to kind of add your own styling and just different customizations to your website. So that's kind of Potion in a nutshell. And I started it around 2 years ago. And I was looking for a new SaaS to start at that time. And I kind of had this theory that for a solo entrepreneur, building on top of another platform was a really good way to go, just because you're not then competing, with all these other big tech companies. You kind of have your niche built in right for you on a platform, and you know which users you're trying to solve problems for. And so I picked Notion as that platform because it was a newer thing. It seemed to be growing a decent amount, and I was using Notion at the time and really loved using it. And so I started searching for different problems that I could solve for Notion users that made a lot of sense. And I found this tool called Fruition that people were using, excuse me, where what Fruition did was basically it was like this little hacky way to write some code. It would tell you the code to paste into Cloudflare, and it would kind of override stuff to then give a custom domain just pointing to a public Notion page. So it was still hosted by Notion and everything, but it gave you a custom domain. And I looked at that and I saw there was hundreds of people that were trying that and using that. And it was, it was kind of a hard thing to set up for people. And so I was like, oh, wow, if I made something like this that just made that whole process a lot easier, this kind of shows that there's demand for this. People want to build websites in Notion. And so that's kind of how the idea came from. And, I decided to start working on it and building it out. And that was kind of the early days of Potion.
When did this all start? When was that?
So it was November of 2020, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, 2020. So a little over 2 years ago that I started.
I found that's an excellent point that you made. You saw something that sort of worked, so there would be demand for it, and then you decided to make it better. I think that's an excellent start. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I like to find things where you can tell people are wanting that thing, and they're hopefully willing to pay for it. The other thing I really liked about Notion was just the community around it was just very lively and talkative, and I could see a lot of Notion people talking about Notion on Twitter and different communities. And so it kind of showed that there was just a really vibrant community there, that if I made something that they liked, maybe they would talk about what I was building too. So
that's also an excellent thing to know. Where does my audience hang out? Can I see them somewhere? Can I meet them somewhere? And that was also the case. So you were really set up for success, I think. Our listeners are mostly solopreneurs who build similar things, or maybe also info products, or maybe they are book authors or musicians, always creating something. And what our listeners tell me that they struggle with is marketing. they say, okay, I'm busy building the whole week over, or at least the whole weekend if I have a side job, for example, a side project for a day job. And they say, where should I find the time for marketing? And I'm also not so good at it as a kind of introverted person. I struggle with bragging about my stuff, right? So they think, I thought it in the beginning, I thought it too, that marketing is kind of making noise and bragging. Turned out to be wrong. I was very wrong on that. But in the beginning, you think like that. And how did you think about marketing when you started Notion? What relationship? Potion, sorry, not Notion.
They're pretty close, aren't they?
Yeah, this would have been something, right? When you started, what relationship did you have towards marketing? How did it fit into your day?
Yeah, first I'll say I definitely feel a lot of that struggle as well, because I'm a software developer, kind of maker first, and marketing isn't necessarily my strong suit. But I definitely like learning and like enjoy trying to try to figure it out. So anyways, in the beginning, a lot of my marketing was kind of just like the building in public kind of stuff.
Okay.
I was starting to get pretty active on Twitter. And I think back then, like 2 years ago, I think building in public on Twitter actually worked a lot better than it does now. Like I feel like everyone's kind of doing it now. And so in some degree, like it doesn't work as well maybe because it's just kind of too overloaded and people don't necessarily care to hear everything anymore. But, in the early days or, 2 years ago, I think that was kind of just when it was starting. And I was one of the first kind of solo entrepreneurs to really share a lot of the behind the scenes. And so I would just share kind of everything on Twitter. I would make these like little 2-minute videos to put up on Twitter where I'd show like what decisions I'm making, little progress that I'm making. And I did that from the very start of Potion. So I actually have all those 2-minute videos are now on YouTube, and I have around, I think, 75 videos of just the whole, basically, almost like the whole story of different parts of building Potion.
75,
and so I was building a lot
that's amazing.
Yeah. So I was building a lot in public on Twitter, and that's probably where I got like my first 75 customers or so. Because, my Twitter following grew pretty quickly. And kind of the funny thing too was one of my very first tweets of starting Potion was I just kind of said, tomorrow I'm going to start building a SaaS business and I'm going to build it in public here. And that tweet kind of went semi-viral and I got like 1,000 followers within 24 hours. So the very beginning of the journey kind of started at a really nice pace with the building in public stuff. And so I just kind of kept doing that and kind of just sharing. And, the whole idea with that is just trying to be transparent, but then also, trying to share valuable things that I'm kind of learning or going through that could hopefully be valuable to other people. And what I found, that can work pretty well when it's like, oh, this is actually valuable information that people are learning by following along what you're doing. But in my case, where it worked out pretty well is a lot of my target users are also entrepreneurs. They're also makers. They're people that are trying to make a simple website or a portfolio website online with Notion and Potion. And so those are the kind of people that I think enjoy the build in public. So it kind of was a perfect kind of target audience
kind of
for that kind of thing. Yeah, where, if you're trying to do the build in public thing, but maybe you're serving bus drivers or something like that. I don't know, just a random example. Like they're probably not the same kind of people that are really going to enjoy following the build in public stuff. And so it's not going to be maybe worth your time to put all the effort into it. So that was a good match for me that really helped out in the early days of Potion. And so that's kind of how I got the business kind of started that way on the marketing side.
How many followers did you have when you said you suddenly earned 1,000 of them? How many did you have before at the time?
I think back then I was at around 1,500 followers.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty much where I am right now. It's interesting. It's a parallel because I'm also starting a new SaaS these days to make marketing simpler for introverts. But let's stick with Potion. So let's say, how much time did you need to get to your first, let's say, the first user ever, and then the first 10? Let's say, what was that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it took me 2 months to kind of build the MVP of Potion. And
Mm-hmm.
so those 2 months I was kind of, I was sharing everything I was doing, but, I had nothing for anyone to try out. After that, I then opened like an early access. And in the first month, I think I got those 10 users just in early access. And then it probably took around 3 months to get to my first like 75 users. So it went at a pretty decent pace in the beginning, and yeah, I think I think that's all kind of thanks to some of the build and public stuff, how that went. Like I really didn't have like a master plan of knowing that was gonna
Yeah,
like go
yeah.
really well, and it just kind of seemed to work, and it really didn't feel like marketing necessarily either, because it was just me kind of like just sharing what I was doing. I think that was something that was helpful for me, where it's like I'm definitely not a marketer, and so like me trying to like really do like marketing kind of things, I think I don't know. This felt like I didn't feel like I was marketing, even though I kind of was a little bit,
Yeah.
and I think that helped me to be able to stick to it and actually do it. So
That's a good thing if you can really, yeah, do it without doing it, right? Without thinking about it. It's a fascinating situation there. In the
mm-hmm,
beginning,
mm-hmm.
when you said these 75 users, were they all paying users or were they free users mostly, or what was the percentage?
Yeah, so they were all paying users. I had a 7-day free trial with
Uh
credit
huh.
card up front, and so people could try it for 7 days. But then, to stick around and actually use the product, they had to eventually start paying. And I kind of stuck away. I tried to go away from having a free plan just because I wanted to force that learning, I guess, for me quicker, where I
Mm-hmm.
knew like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
there's this point where people have to start using it if they want to pay. And I really know if the product's valuable and doing what it needs to do if people are willing to pay for it. So I kind of stayed away from a free plan of any sort for the first like year and a half actually with Potion, and that did decently well. Maybe I could have gotten more out of the product if I had a free plan earlier, but that's kind of how I started at least.
Yeah, that's an important thing to know whether people really are able to pay and want to pay for what you do, and it's a good sign if they do. Yeah. When
Yeah,
you
yeah.
think about the later time, did your marketing change one day from building in public to something else?
Yeah, it definitely has changed a bit. So yeah, in the early days, it really was all just from Twitter, people finding it that way. And then I really, I didn't want that to be my only channel for like
Yeah.
my only source for people finding me, just because it's very dependent on me, right? Like it's very much like, oh, I gotta like tweet out stuff about Potion or
Yeah.
tweet what I'm doing. And so I wanted to find other channels that worked well. And the main one that I've been working on, and still it's kind of a work in progress, because it's not as good as I'd like it to be, but is basically Google SEO. So creating content, things that people are searching for that are trying to solve the problem of, Notion website. And if they, then they kind of find my website that way and try it out. And so nowadays, Google's like my number one source for refer to the Potion website, and Twitter is second. It used to be that Twitter was
Mm.
always first for the longest time.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so really happy about that. That now like SEO and content is kind of my main driver, but there's kind of another piece in there that's actually my main driver, and that's my affiliate program. So I have an
Oh.
affiliate program where 30% of the revenue that affiliates send to me, I give to them to kind of
Mm-hmm.
incentivize them
Mm-hmm.
to make content about Potion and stuff like that. And I just have, I don't know, I maybe have like 100 people signed up for it, the affiliate program, but only like the top 3 or 4 people actually have content that's like continually driving people to Potion. So it's kind of heavy loaded on the top side, where it's like you just need 1 or 2 or 3 people that are like have really good websites that are in the niche, they're in the Notion niche and they're creating content, and, some of it sends people to Potion. And so that's actually my main driver of revenue from people right now is them finding it through that content that affiliates have made. And then they find Potion. And so yeah, that's my main source right now. And I really like that source because I don't really have to do too much other than just, pay them 30% of the revenue. Otherwise, it's a pretty passive thing. And then the other benefit of it is, again, I'm not like a big marketer. Like, I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. Like, I've been learning a lot about SEO and how to like rank higher in Google and stuff, but I'm definitely not an expert. Where some of my affiliates are like, they've been doing this for a while. They're good at it. They know how to make good content. And I also feel sometimes that like it kind of looks better coming from someone else to someone like, oh wow, like this random person is saying this other tool I should use. Sometimes that looks better than coming from the company itself, and converts people better. So it's been a great source for me just because, again, like I'm not a marketer. But yeah, that's one of my main sources right now is that affiliate program, and then kind of the Google SEO stuff, and Twitter is kind of after that at this point.
That's fascinating. I should really think about making such an affiliate program for my product too. For me, it's about Twitter right now. Twitter is the number one source. Google is slowly picking up. I started writing content, I think, 3 months ago. Yeah, I'm now. I started at the beginning of September with my stuff. So September, October, November, December, January. Yeah, I'm now 5 months into the product. And I started writing, I think, 4 months ago. And Google is slowly picking up traffic now. How long did it take for you that SEO kicked in?
So it's still kind of hard for me to know sometimes because, so like I get around 8,000 unique visits a month to the website, and a decent amount of those are actually people searching specifically for the brand. So my guess is, I'd say maybe 50% of those. So that means those are probably people that heard of Potion somewhere. Maybe they heard it from a friend. Maybe they saw it from my Twitter, and then later they're like, oh yeah, that Potion thing, I'm going to search for it. So in some ways, that's not really that portion. You can almost take out of like the Google organic, like ranked, searches in some ways, because it's just a branded search. But yeah, it definitely took a while, and really like the last, 9 months, my traffic hasn't really improved that much over the last 9 months, even though in the last 9 months, that's actually been what I focused on the most is making more content for SEO and stuff like that. And I haven't seen much gains from that. So I'm still kind of waiting a little bit for some of the content I've created, maybe 4 months ago to kind of have in effect. But yeah, like the first 6 months or so, I think is, the first 6 months it was all Twitter. So it was after that I started to kind of see some traffic from Google. So it definitely took some time, and that's one of the hard parts for me for sure is just being patient to like wait for things to happen. And I still am just, I'm still learning about it because I feel like I have seen some people share where it's like they created content like 2 weeks ago and now it's like ranking already, and like, so I don't know, it's I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong sometimes, or it's like maybe I'm not doing something to rank it the right way, or if it does just take time, or it just kind of really depends. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's not. So I'm still, figuring that out a lot, basically.
It's also the same thing I heard. Most people say Google takes tons of time until it kicks in. And other people say, I've done, for example, some programmatic SEO generating 350 pages in one day, and I got lots of traffic in 2 weeks. And I always think, isn't that only a special case? It reminds me of book authors, right? You have 100,000 authors, and only 1% of them they really get to the top in the ranking list. So I think it's not there's no magic bullet here. It's just trying, figuring things out, and learning from others. All this keyword stuff, for example, I didn't care about keywords yet. I'm just writing my content and then looking into Google Search Console what happens. And I think after a while I will see some recurring keywords, so maybe I can optimize then. But at the moment, I'm not thinking about which keywords to rank for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's a tricky world, and it's like, Google could change something, so then you're kind of reliant on Google a little bit to how well things perform and how it works. So it's not an easy thing out there, but I've taken a couple SEO courses and just trying to learn from some people. I've been blessed to have a couple people that are really good at it and like have a lot of experience with it. So just being able to have someone like that to reach out to and ask questions like, hey, what would you do about this situation? Like, how would you handle this link or this title or, things like that has been really, really helpful in learning and figuring it out.
That's cool. Can you recommend someone? If I want to learn SEO, for example, or my listeners want to learn SEO, can you recommend some courses?
So let's see. I'm going to forget their name just because whenever I'm on the spot, I always forget people's names. I'm bad with names. Oh, here he is. So Jordan O'Connor on Twitter. So I think his handle is JDNOC, JDNOC. He actually is an entrepreneur, an indie hacker as well, and that's why he's a really awesome kind of follow because he kind of comes from the same background, but his business, he grew up to like 40K MRR, and he really did it all through SEO. So he really learned a ton about SEO and how to do that well, and that was kind of the main big winner for his business. And so now he still has that business. It's not grown as much anymore, and I think it's kind of started to fall off a little bit just because of the competition and stuff. But now he's kind of more so pivoting into teaching other people about SEO and what he's learned and stuff. So he has like a course I think he's maybe about to release, but he also just shares a lot of good content on Twitter for free. So I've learned a lot from him. He's definitely a great one. Let's see, there's... that would be the main one.
Yeah.
At least the one I can think off the top of my head.
That's good. That's good. It's always to have, if he comes from the same background, this is good because sometimes people talk about SEO and who work for a big company, for example, and doing SEO for a physical product, for example, and it's a totally different thing. So if somebody gives me advice about SEO for Nike, I would say, okay, that's nice, but maybe it doesn't apply to my situation. So
right, exactly.
When you write content, I've got a different question here. How about consistency? How do you manage to stay consistent at writing content?
I would say that I'm not very consistent.
Okay.
So I'm probably not the great person to ask advice for on that. What I've kind of done is I've kind of done like almost sprints where I'll have a period where I'm like, all right, I'm going to like focus on getting some good content out there. And for like a couple weeks, I'll really focus on making some different articles, adding to my website, updating those things. And I'll do that and then kind of like pause and like go work on something else at that point and then come back and check later and see how it's going. So that's I don't know if that's a good way to do it or not. The other thing I've tried is actually basically paying a service, someone else to create content for me. And they created different little content about Notion related topics, how to kind of tutorials kind of things. And they added that to my blog. So I think I have around 5 or 6 articles that is from a service that kind of helped with that. And they kind of just did like one article every 2 weeks for a period of time. And so that was a good way for me to stay consistent because I didn't have to really do much other than pay them to do some stuff. And out of that, because I think that was probably almost a year ago now that I did that. And out of that content, there's maybe one piece or maybe 2 that get a little bit of traffic. And so it works to a degree. I don't know how many of those users actually convert because that's the other thing is like attracting the right kind of users through Google that are actually the ones that are
yes.
potentially searching for a solution, that are way more highly to convert. Where it's like if I reach some people that have no interest in building a website, then it's kind of a waste of time in some degree. So yeah, it's kind of a hard thing to track with that. But yeah, that's kind of what I've done, and some of that's worked. But yeah, consistency, I'm definitely not great at that because I see some project to work on or something I do, and I kind of just go for it for a period of time, and then I'll kind of switch to something else. And honestly, that's kind of how I enjoy it too. Like that's why I kind of like being an indie hacker is like I'm able to kind of just figure out what I want to work on, what I think needs to be done, and just kind of go out and do it, instead of having to have like daily routines. But yeah.
Yeah, that's always the question. Should I have a routine or should I just jump around and do what I like? For me, it's a big question. I usually work with routines. For example, I use this website by John Yongfook, this Coding Week, marketingweek.com, and it always tells me whether it's Coding Week or Marketing Week. And I have this rhythm which now kind of works for me because it gives me the possibility to really code intensely for 1 week, then do marketing very intensely for 1 week, and then switch back to coding. So I feel like I get something done that is more meaty than if I would simply sit down for a day or so and write something. The other thing I do is on Sundays, I usually write my newsletter. During the last weeks, I have changed that. I write a newsletter on one weekend and then do a podcast on the next weekend. So whenever I meet people, I record, and on Sundays I edit and release. So writing and podcasting has become a routine now. I'm not sure whether that's enough, but yeah, that's all I can do at the moment. I'm trying to establish an email list. I have established an email list on ConvertKit, and I've created a freebie called the Reluctant Marketer Setup Workbook. It's a free PDF you can download and to get structure into your marketing efforts. And this is working quite well, or it used to. It's a little going backwards now. Maybe I'm not announcing it anymore. That's one of my problems. Mm-hmm. I don't like to repeat myself. If I, for example, in the beginning, it's always hype. I always say, I've got something new, people look at this. And then after a while, I find it more or less normal what I created. But for other people, it might be a sensation because they've never seen such a thing. So it's difficult.
Yeah, that definitely makes it difficult. I don't like to repeat myself either, but I hear that's like a good marketing rule is to repeat yourself.
Right.
So that's still something I'm not great at or like to do too much.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the things. Recently, I had written a longer article. I call it the SPME marketing habit. That's like S stands for strategy, P for positioning, M for messaging, and E for experimentation. So that's a kind of cycle you go. And I put that online, and suddenly someone shared it on Indie Hackers. And hundreds of people were coming in. I was totally amazed and thought, wow. And this one article is still the top one on my entire blog, although I've written other articles since then, but it stays at the top. Yeah. Is it the same in your blog? That's that awesome. One or two articles are making the most?
Yeah, definitely. It seems like, if you kind of hit an accord with people, especially, a signal like that where someone liked it enough that they were willing to share it for you, it's like that could be a good enough signal that continues to be true when people find it, that they're like, oh, like I really like this one. And Google's, I think, picks that up and they're like, all right, let's, maybe rank this a little higher or whatever. Like it's a piece of content that people seem to like. And so once you have like a winner, it's hard to beat some of those ones out with your new content and stuff. So yeah, I've definitely seen that a little bit. Like I'll have, content I created, probably 2 years ago now that is still one of my top ones, like, ranking for a query in Google, and I still get people coming through it and checking out the website that way. So that is definitely one of the beautiful things of SEO is, once you have some good content that's ranking well, it just kind of, for the most part, is kind of stays around and is just passively helping people find you, which is great. So
Yeah, that's good. Do you have some places where you see people talking about wanting to have a website, like for example, the Notion community? Are they actively discussing website problems somewhere?
Yeah, so a little bit. My eyes aren't open to this as much as I was, earlier on in the days with Potion, but the main place I see it still is like on Twitter. Like someone will just kind of ask, in a tweet about like, hey, like how do I make a website with Notion, or I'm wanting to make a website with Notion. What tool should I use? And like people share what's worked for them and stuff like that. So like those are good opportunities for maybe me to reply and be like, hey, you can check this out, what I've built, something like that. So yeah, there's still definitely people talking about it and asking questions about it. And it's just interesting, kind of like what we're talking about with like the repeat yourself thing, where it's always, I think I've kind of stopped talking about like Potion websites or Notion websites on Twitter or other places, because I just, it's so normal to me. I've been doing it for a couple of years now. But
Exactly.
the truth is that every day there's new people realizing, oh wow, like you can do this thing with Notion. There's still new people every day that are learning about Notion for the first time, which is pretty incredible. And they're just like, oh wow, like I really like this tool, and they try it out, and then they're like, oh wow, you can also do more stuff, like build websites with it. And so I think I probably should be focusing on that group of people more, because those are obviously people that are learning about it and exploring it, and they're maybe at a place where they're willing to try it out or buy. But I've just been used to talking about those kind of things for so long that I don't like to repeat myself and talk about that again. So there's probably some things I could do to maybe have a voice in that area a little bit better than I do currently. So thanks for reminding me about that.
Yeah, it's replying is an interesting tactic because it's easier than posting, I think. If you see some content and someone asks a question, you can simply jump in and reply. It's much easier than thinking about what should I write now. And it made me think, when you said you see those questions still, are the questions directed to you? So are they people mentioning you on Twitter, or do you have to look for those questions?
More rarely, they might be asking me specifically, like if they know that that's kind of what I do and they're wanting some help. But yeah, most of the time it's just people just tweeting out on Twitter and asking questions to their audience or to Notion users. And so yeah, then I have to go out and find it, and or it just kind of comes across my feed, since I'm following a lot of the Notion kind of niche kind of people where those kind of things just pop up. So yeah, that's typically how it works.
Yeah, I recently had a course, a Twitter mastery course by my memory for names. Dagobert Renuf, of course.
Oh, yep. I took that course. That was amazing.
Yeah, amazing, right? And he said, recycle your replies. Recycle your best replies and turn them into content. I found that very convincing.
Yeah. Like I think that's a good way to use Twitter in general, is just trying out ideas, putting it out there with either replies or tweets, seeing what resonates with people. And then, almost using that as a learning, because it's like, oh, now you could maybe write a whole blog post about that idea.
Exactly.
Or, in my case, we're talking about like people asking questions around Notion websites. Like I've kind of learned like, oh, these are the things that maybe people don't understand about the process. What kind of blog post could I write that's actually answering that same question, so that maybe when they're searching for that, they'll find that and it'll be helpful. So yeah, I think using Twitter that way is a really good way just kind of learn about your niche, learn about things within your product, like things you can do by just asking questions, seeing what other people are asking, trying out ideas. And so, yeah, using Twitter in that way, I think is very helpful.
Exactly. Twitter is a fascinating community for that. I learned a lot from Amy Hoy. She's into a concept called Sales Safari, or she calls it Sales Safari. Safari in the sense of you go to Africa, you watch the animals who come to the watering hole to drink, and she says don't run customer interviews, contrary to what other people say. She says if you run a customer interview, it's a kind of synthetic situation, whereas when you watch out people in the wild, like a safari kind of thing, it's more natural. You see what they are talking about, what their real problems are, what their questions are, and so on. So she says, go out where your audience hangs out and try to answer their questions and then turn them into something educational, let's say an article, a blog post, something, or a workbook, and then give it to them, give it back to them and say, hey, I've created something for you. And I found that also pretty convincing. I thought, it's much easier than running customer interviews.
I'd agree with that. Like doing research to kind of like go see what people are saying and stuff like that online is definitely a good route if it's possible. So the one kind of pushback I have on that is I feel like there's certain niches or there's certain products where it's just really hard to find that, that watering hole online, like in the wild kind of thing. That was something that was, definitely very beneficial for me with Notion, because people that use Notion just like to talk about it. It's a decently sized niche. Like I think there's probably 30 million Notion users or more.
Oh, wow.
And so that, I'm going to be able to find that watering hole. But I feel like there's certain niches where either it's just so small of a niche, or maybe it's a kind of niche where people just don't talk online. Like maybe it's a kind of community where it's like they're talking in person to each other, or they're talking on the phone, or I don't know, just different ways of communicating, where it might be hard to find them online and actually see. Like one of my previous products that I tried to do was a intercom add-on kind of tool extension to intercom, and those customers were a lot bigger, like B2B, like business kind of customers, and it was a lot harder for me to find just people talking about, like those kind of people talking about stuff online, and seeing their problems. And my guess is kind of because they're bigger companies, it's not as, I guess, okay for those roles to like just openly talk about their problems in front of the whole world, because they've got employees, they've got maybe bosses that could see what they're talking about. Like it's just a different world. And so
exactly,
I found it hard with that product to be able to just find information about people's problems and what they're struggling with. And so in that case, I think the talking to users was more helpful. And in general, it was just kind of harder to understand the problems just because it was kind of different from me. I was just like this solo indie hacker, and I was trying to understand how businesses' processes work and, that kind of thing. I really like that advice, that concept she's talking about. I just think maybe with certain problems, it might be harder to make that work or to find that out there in the wild.
That can be right. I can imagine B2B people, they have a big company behind, they have a boss, maybe they have employees. I don't know whether they are talking so openly about the problem or their problems.
Yeah.
Maybe on the golf course.
Yep, maybe.
Okay, great. When you let me ask you one more question about the future. What do you think is the future of Potion, and in which direction do you want to go?
So I've been kind of debating this a lot in my mind. It's kind of one of those things where as an entrepreneur, you have a lot of options. Like there's a lot of things you could go do. You could go start a new business. You could go work for somebody else. You could kind of have your product like kind of transform it to be something else and go in a different direction. It's sometimes that's almost the problem, is like figuring out what you want to do, and just like, because there's so many decisions, so many options. And so all that being said, I've just been thinking a lot about what's the future of Potion, where do I want to take it. There's a lot of ways I could go with like trying to expand the business. Like I could try to expand it to other tools as well, like other than Notion, and support other tools that are similar to Notion. I could try to build it out to where the business isn't reliant on Notion, like make it be it's really like its own website builder, its own editor. So I could kind of go in some of those different directions. And at least on that front, I think I've decided like some of those things I think could just be too ambitious for a solo entrepreneur like myself. Like it'd just be a lot of work to build out a fully, editable website builder or go and like support other tools. And so I think I've decided in some ways that means I'm limiting my potential growth with the business, because if I did that, there's a lot more customers I could potentially go out and get. But I think I've decided I want to stay to the Notion niche and kind of just do this part, do this niche, this concept really well in the Notion niche. And I think it's easier to market it that way because it's just for the Notion niche. And so that kind of being said, like there's not, there's some features and things I could do and improve on the product, but I don't think any of those is really going to be a game changer. Like the product kind of already does what, people expect it to do. It does its job pretty well. And so now like I'm kind of to the point where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't spend all my time on the business. Like maybe I should, do the marketing things, and like that's kind of maybe the marketing, customer support stuff, of course. But other than that, like maybe I'll have some extra time to start something else, start another business that's maybe another kind of solo entrepreneur kind of business, or do something different. So that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. Starting to maybe explore some different ideas, not spend all my time on Potion, and so I feel very blessed to be in a position to just kind of start doing that. But yeah, I'm still kind of figuring it out day by day, kind of what I want to do. And it's funny that you asked that question, because it's been something I've been thinking a ton about in the last couple weeks, actually. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe I've got a tip for you. I recently was very much into this jobs to be done theory thing. They say that a customer wants to get some job done, and they are sort of hiring your tool to get it done. For example, they want a website. And what the job to be done people say, they say, look at the adjacent jobs. What are they doing before they want to have a website? Maybe you can find something there where you can support them. Or what are they doing after they have their website? Are there other jobs to be done that they are trying to do? So before and after that, which kind of around that, maybe there are more jobs to be done where you can support them. So this would be an idea.
That makes a lot of sense. And even like figuring out, you could use those things as marketing kind of things too, like engineering as marketing ideas, where it's a simple problem and you could make it for free, but it's hitting those exact same potential customers that would then maybe like your, the website builder product as well. Finding those kind of things that serves the same people. There's definitely good ways to get new people in the door, do marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah. Maybe kind of a content calendar, for example, a free content calendar tool that fits into Potion, where people can have something recurring in Notion so that they stay consistent with their writing or something like that.
That's good ideas.
Thank you very much, Noah, for being here today. I think we learned a lot from you doing the marketing without doing marketing. It's really that's a dream situation for me. To simply be there, and the fact that you are there does the marketing for you. So that's an ideal situation, I think. So thanks a lot, and I wish you very much success and good luck for Potion.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Reluctant Marketer podcast. You can find me on Twitter at BohlenLabs. That spells BOHLENLABS. Or you can send me an email to matthias@bohlenlabs.com. If you want to support this podcast, please share it with a friend on your social media networks and leave a rating in your favorite podcast player app. This will help other reluctant marketers find this podcast as well. Thank you very much for listening today, and see you in the next episode. Bye bye.